show with me, your host, Leah Rowling. Do you believe you are capable of choosing your future? Sometimes it takes just one person to believe in you, for you to believe in yourself. If you find yourself continuing to say, someday I will take better care of myself, only to continue living the same day over and over and over again, then you, my friend, are in the right place. I am your biggest cheerleader, inspiring you to become you on purpose and with intention. Are you ready to create a life you love? I'm excited to share with you some big ideas that you can use today to inspire, impact, and influence your life and everyone in it. The Becoming You show starts now. Hello, my friends. How are you? What have you been up to? What have you been working on? I want to know. When I do these podcasts, I'm sitting in my office and I'm imagining you living your life all out, creating memories with your family, a rhythm about your day, a joy in your heart, connecting with yourself and others, essentially winning at your life. And part of me wishes, selfishly, that you were with me right now. We could just have a little chat. And I would ask you how you are, really. I would ask you what projects you're working on, what dreams you have, where you might feel stuck, where you might feel free, right? I would ask you how your relationships are, right? With others and yourself. I would ask you about your energy, and I would ask you how it's been. I would ask you what is setting your hair on fire. What are you obsessed with in your life? I would also ask what emotions you've been operating from that maybe make you feel a little heavy and bitter. And it's this last question that we're going to kind of unpack today. The last question about where you feel bitter. Where are you operating from bitterness? Katie Byron talks about clean pain and dirty pain. I've shared that with you all on the show before, but for those that are new, welcome. For those that have been with me for a while, I love you and I appreciate you. But clean pain is the kind of emotional response to something that leaves you feel better on the other side. It's what I might like to call inappropriate pain. It's a mature pain. It leaves you feeling complete on the other side of it because it's a whole expression of our humanness. It is feeling sad when you lost someone that you love. It is feeling disappointed when you had a launch of a product that didn't maybe go how you wanted. And then there's what she calls dirty pain. And dirty pain leaves you bitter. It is pain like resentment, anger, frustration, annoyance, worry, confusion, and doubt. These are emotions that I like to call indulgent. These are emotions that we like to experience so that we don't have to have the real feeling beneath them, or so that we can escape negative emotion altogether. These emotions, worry, confusion, overwhelm, are usually just offered up to me by my clients as a reality, as if emotions are just kind of happening to them, as if they are just at the effects of their life's situation. These are the feelings that don't leave you bitter because they keep you stuck in the indulgency of the experience. I will also add that these emotions feel very necessary. Your brain will fight to keep them, not because they motivate any amazing change, but rather because it's familiar. And these emotions, they keep you safe, right? Nothing new learned, nothing new tried. Like worry keeps you in your head, overthinking, underfeeling. Confusion leaves you doubting decisions, the very decisions that are required to live the biggest life ever. No new decisions, no new change. And if you continue to do what you've always done, the chances that you survive, by the way, are pretty good. The odds are kind of in your favor that you will not be either physically harmed or emotionally harmed. What the brain wants for you is to stay alive. And as long as there's no perceived danger, things must be fine. And we all know where fine gets us. It gets us hiding from our feelings and pretending to not rock the boat, not stand in our truth, not be authentic. It has us hiding from the very life that we think we are protecting. It has us alive, but not living. Now, before I get back into the bitterness conversation, I want to make sure that we know that everything we do, every single thing we do, is to feel a certain way, right? The worst thing that could ever happen is a negative emotion. And if you are new to me, I want you to remember, and if you've been with me for a while, this is a friendly remember. When you realize that the worst emotion you can feel, right, is just a vibration in the body that you create by way of your thinking, you will be willing to feel anything. And if you are willing to feel anything, there is nothing that you won't be willing to do to get what you want. And not only that, but this worst feeling, this vibration, this emotion is completely manageable by the work that we do here on the show, and the work that I do with my coaching clients, and the work that I do in my coaching courses. So if you've not been to my website for a while, I've got a new course on clutter. I've got a new course on brain management. Check me out there, www.leahrolling1l.com. Okay. I want this work in your homes. I want this work in your life. I want this work in your head, in your heart, because this work is transformational, not just for your life, but for every single human that is in it. And so when we do this work, the other thing that is important that I think that we need to realize is that feelings are part of the human experience. We have a contrast of positive and negative feelings that makes all feeling possible. If we experienced only positive emotion, we wouldn't even know that it was positive. We wouldn't be able to appreciate the beauty without the ugly. Okay. So in spite of this, most of us are walking around assuming that life should be better than it is. We desperately want there to be more good in the world than bad. Many of us feel that our true purpose in life is to conquer all the bad things so we could just be happy. Happy without challenge, happy without adversity, just happy, 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 happy. And when we're not happy, we think something has gone very terribly wrong, right? And when we believe when things go bad, or our kids feel bad, or our significant others feel bad, that something has gone terribly, terribly wrong. And I believe that this thought that something has gone wrong has led us into what I'm going to call the BS cycle. It's the blame, shame cycle. Okay. So consider for a moment that maybe our human experience is supposed to be a balance of positive and negative. Okay. And if you accept this concept, you will be thrust into a world, right, with much less negative about the negative. Okay. We'll stop getting mad about being mad. We'll stop worrying that we're worrying. We'll stop being anxious that we're anxious. Instead, we could just accept that this is part of the human experience, because it is. And instead of resisting it, we could open up to it. And then the negative emotion usually feels so awful, more awful than it would need to, because of our judgment. And when we judge it, we double down on the emotion, as if the worry wasn't bad enough in the first place. We throw we throw a pile of shame on top of it. Okay. So we make the negative worse by having a negative emotion about the negative emotion. Do you see this? And then we rob from the positive side of the 50-50. One other thing that I believe that is important to understand in this entire conversation, in our effort to be happy all the time, we stay away from the discomfort, the embarrassment, even the boredom that could help us grow and inspire our dreams. So if we learned to embrace that emotional balance, means that 50% of the time we are going to be on the other side of happy and nothing has gone wrong. This is just us being human. And if we could embrace that, we would be willing to fail eagerly, like on purpose. And we would show up courageously. And I believe that we could love better unconditionally, okay? Because when you stop being afraid to feel, you start living and loving to the biggest potential, okay? We are given, for the lack of a better word, emotions, I believe, to feel and experience as part of the human journey. We want and need the negative ones. I'm selling you hard on this because it's gonna make sense when we flush it out, talking about bitterness, okay? We don't want to feel joy all the time. We don't. We want to feel the range based on what's happening in the world and how we want to think about it. And once you accept this, you can live a more conscious life. The responsibility for us to know, right, that we create feelings by way of our thoughts, and we wouldn't want to feel happy all the time. Life gives us lots of opportunities to not feel happy about things, right? But rather, can we feel the whole range? And I believe the gift of the conscious life is to decide what emotions serve you best in this balance between positivity and negativity. And I'd also invite you to choose them wisely. And so most of the feelings that I referred to at the very beginning of this conversation as indulgent, okay, are also part of your human condition. But many times those are unconscious, right? The opposite of living this conscious life, and show up sometimes seemingly without our permission, hence unconscious. Now, normally when I have this indulgent conversation, I usually refer to the feelings of worry, anxiousness, confusion, frustration. But we also have feelings that we feel that are positive, that kind of sneak in outside of our consciousness. Emotions like love and abundance and motivation and focus and gratitude. And the reason I wanted to add this to the conversation is to show you that indulgence is a two-way street, right? And you can choose what you indulge in. And again, there are going to be times that you're going to want to feel negative emotion. And it's an important distinction. This allowing an emotion versus indulging in emotion. So, for example, we sometimes need to allow emotions that we would normally resist or avoid. Okay? The emotions we tend to avoid are the same emotions that we need to work through to get the results that we want in our life. The most common is discomfort, deprivation, urge, boredom, dissatisfaction, failure, right? This isn't a complete list, but you get the idea. The unwillingness to stay conscious when these emotions come up is a cause of suffering, addiction, overeating, overdrinking, and behavior disorders. Think about it. If you allowed yourself to have an urge, just allowed it and not act on it, how might that support your goals, right? If you have an urge to eat, an urge to shop, an urge to disconnect, right? What if you just allowed yourself to sit in boredom without having to buffer the boredom with a bag of chips? Okay, if you just allowed yourself to feel deprived, you might not go for that extra helping or those cookies that you know you've done enough that you just can't have one. Learning how to allow the negative emotion to be there without trying to resist it, avoid it, or buffering it away is the way. Discomfort of all kinds is the currency to your dreams. But we must know when we're allowing and when we are indulging, okay? Allowing emotions is very, very, very different than indulging emotions. Sometimes we indulge in emotions as a way of staying stuck, right? These negative emotions like confusion, doubt, worry, frustration, and bitterness, these feelings seem important, and it may seem justified to feel them on purpose. But these feelings are the ones that keep us from taking the action we most want to take. And what I find for me is when I take action from, let's say, bitterness, which is just indulgent anger, okay? I find myself beating myself up in this BS cycle, right? Motive for sure, but it disallows me to be who I want to be. Because the whole time I'm doing it to prove myself. Why? Why am I bitter? Because of the BS cycle. Because blame has me bitterly, the blame has me blaming bitterly, right? That was a mouthful. Blaming bitterly. Yeah. Blame has me blaming bitterly why they shouldn't have done what they did. Okay. And look at me. And I'm going to show them what I can do. I'll prove them wrong about me. Okay. The energy behind it is low level. It's low level stifling energy, requiring more of mine to muster the umph, right? To prove them wrong. That's typically what we do when we get bitter, right? Is we want to prove them wrong. We want to prove that we're better than them. Okay? That's blame. The shame part of this BS cycle is the same thing, right? I try to prove myself to myself. And a lot of times that looks like me beating myself up, right? Punishing myself for not being better, for not being more worthy, for not being enough. Because if I was better, the very thing that I was initially bitter about and angry about wouldn't have happened. And so what that looks like a lot for me, right? Again, before I learned this work and created these frameworks for my life, was I would overdo it at the gym. I would overrun, I would overaccomplish, I would overcheck boxes thinking that this is the solve, as if bitterness is just something that you can outrun. And if you know my story, you will know that there are not enough miles to solve for the bitterness that I had, and yet we use it so often as an agent for change. It left me pretty much overdoing everything in pretty much every category that you can imagine. Right? Over shopping, over pleasing, over apologizing, over accomplishing, over running, over spending, over everything. But when change is inspired by bitterness, it doesn't stick. It doesn't stick for two reasons. It doesn't stick because we don't get the feeling that we thought we would get. We thought we would feel better. Remember the reason we do anything? We thought doing this thing would be the thing that finally proved ourselves to others and ourselves, and we could finally be proud, worthy, enough. But it didn't feel better because we didn't work on the emotional intelligence along the way. We grinded our way, we gritted our way, we shouldered begrudgingly. People call this having a chip on their shoulder, the responsibility to show the world that we're something, that we mattered, that we were important, but all doing it from a place of desperation and need, blind to the fact that grinding and gritting action might create the results that you had wanted, but not the ones that align with who you are. And so the disconnect creates more bitterness, and then we continue the loop for approval to make up for all the people that should have approved of us that did it, for all the people that should have been better for us that were not. So how do you shift from changing from bitterness to changing from acceptance? It seems obvious, right? You drop the bitterness. But what are the things that you need to let go of in order to do that? I believe that so much of negative emotion, that dirty pain like bitterness that leaves you bitter, is derived from not embracing and allowing feeling. Rather, white knuckling the anger as a badge of honor that only weighs us down. We become bitter when we haven't processed the anger. Bitterness then becomes an indulgent anger. And when we let anger at others, our frustration at our situation fester and build up in our hearts, we can begin to develop bitterness. And it is this bitterness that has us seeking external validation as the solve for the heart that is hardened. And so the way we become unburdened by this bitterness is to allow the primary emotion of anger. We just allow it. We recognize that our anger is a feeling that's created by thoughts, sentences in our mind. And we recognize that this is a thought and that I'm angry and nothing has gone wrong. Nothing has gone wrong, right? It's a primary emotion, one of the 6. And when we just allow for anger, right? We don't bury it. We don't resist it. We don't avoid it. We don't think that something has gone terribly, terribly wrong in our life, right? Because of all of the conversations that offer up, you should just be happy. Like, you should just be happy. Can't you be happy? Can't you figure out how to be happy? And so we just fine away our entire existence because we feel shamed about anger. When really, if we just sat with anger for a hot sec, processed it through, and shifted. Took the responsibility. If you missed the podcast that I did on that, that podcast is going to help. Took the responsibility of, okay, I'm angry. How do I want to feel? How do I want to show up? Why am I so angry? Recognize that all negative emotion is just an unmet need. Generally, when I find myself angry, it's because I've given too much credit to either the situation or my results. I get angry because people should be different than they are, that I am placing a lot of my emotional well-being on what people say, what people do, how they show up, right? And then I get angry about their situation and disempower myself. That's generally when I do my models, that's generally what I find. Or I get angry because my results were different than what I had expected, what I had wanted. And then I realize, the S doesn't create my anger, nor do my results. I create my anger. So if I'm creating this, what is it that I need to solve for it? No amount of validation, no amount of an apology, no amount of someone telling us how awesome we are, and likewise, how not awesome we are, creates our experience for ourselves. We 100% create our experience for ourselves. Now, I'm not saying that we create situations and circumstances. I'm saying that we create our experience. And so we ought to be, want to be, should be excited to be 100% responsible for it. Because if I'm responsible for creating anger, I'm also responsible for the shift that's required to get me out of anger, to get me from a place of compassion, curiosity, confidence, whatever is required. But I am the one that needs to fill that need, not anyone else. And when I don't, right, because I feel like anger, like we shouldn't have it, and we put a bunch of judgment and shame on anger, then it turns to bitterness. And bitterness is really hard to unpack and unravel. It's really hard to see it in yourself. And then you just wonder why you're just so cranky, right? Why you're just kind of grumpy, right? Why can't you get out of it? Like, it looks kind of like a funk, right? Does anybody else have funks like I do? Okay. If you're in a funk, it's most likely you've buried a primary emotion. And I think next week I'll talk about how to unburden some of these negative emotions, some of these indulgent emotions, so that you can free yourself to live a more balanced life with happiness and some of the clean pain that I talked about earlier in the show. So I'll end with this. Do yourself the gift of taking responsibility for your emotions and sit with it and ask what it is that you need, what it is that you need to free yourself from this. I promise you deserve it. You deserve the freedom and the peace more than whoever it is that you want to be bitter about deserves your anger. I promise you this is true. They don't even feel it. You feel it. You deserve the peace. I hope you will give yourself that gift today. Have an amazing one, and I will see you next week on the show. Take care. Bye-bye. You have been listening to the Becoming You show with me, your host, Leah Rolling, where I share big ideas to inspire, impact, and influence your life. Tune in every Friday at 11 Central on transformationtalkradio.com for your morning cup of coffee, the hug you never want to end, and that inspirational message that you felt was written just for you. Each show is inspiring you to become you with purpose and intention. For more information or to connect with me, visit www.leahrolling.com.